Hi, and welcome to Random Rogers Big Picture for the week of January 4th. Special, my glasses will be back to normal. I just got in from doing some shoveling addition. I also thought, in addition to that, we might do a little recap of 2008. Terrible year for the market, obviously, down 38.4%, something like that. Obviously a terrible year. Couple of things, though, to talk about. One is, it's a bear market. It's a bear market that unfolded exactly the way that I started writing about back in 2004. The yield curve inverted early on, way before there was an inkling of a bear market. That warned of trouble. Then as the S&P 500 was dancing back and forth with its 200-day moving average, it was in the process of, in fact, rolling over slowly. And as it was rolling over slowly, and here we're talking about October, November, December of 2007, everyone was saying, no problem, this is not a bear market, yada, yada, yada. These are all classic signs. So in those posts from 2004 and 5 and 6 where, I said this is what it'll look like, let's be clear, that was not a prediction. The way I think I kind of phrased it in a comment the other day was, I had a history book. I was familiar with what was in the history book, and then history kind of repeated itself. So it's really not a prediction. It's the thing I've been harping on for ages, heeding warnings of the market and acting appropriately toward the goal of what I've been saying all along, trying to avoid a chunk of the bear market. In terms of specific performance, I used to give an exact number to a generic portfolio that I used to generally keep tabs on where things are. And while that's definitely representative, it is not the specific client account. In giving that number, invariably, some clients would be ahead of the number, some would be behind, and it would lead to more questions than it would answer. So for all of this past year, I haven't been giving an exact number, but that being said, if you think about the S&P 500 in terms of being down 38.4 or 5%, the result was, if you then, so S&P down 38.5. If you think about our portfolio and you think down about half that, well, it wasn't quite that good, but pretty close to half. So if you think about down half as much, only not quite that good, then you're in the ballpark, and that should give you a pretty good idea in relation to down 38 and change for the S&P 500. The reasons for that all are attributable to the top-down process, which is first the decision to be in or out of stocks, and the decision, as we were below the 200-day moving average, was to be out. As a practical matter, that doesn't mean 100% out, but we had greatly reduced the exposure. At some points, I think I had as much as 35% in cash in the portfolio, while also having double short in the portfolio. And so in some of those stretches where it was really puking down, I just was not going down that much, nowhere near. And again, heeding past warnings, and they came to matter again on this go-around. More top-down. I heeded the warning about the financial sector. If you look back at some posts from 2005 and 2006, kind of more 2005 when it was obvious the yield curve was going to invert, 2005, and then in 2006 as it was inverting, and I talked about underweighting financials, and there's no post you can find where I attempted to quantify at that point the magnitude of what was coming to the financial sector. You don't need to. If you just heed a simple warning, chances are you're going to avoid some pain. Now, inverted yield curve doesn't happen every time. Doesn't always mean the financials are going to lag the broader market, but I heed that as a warning of trouble coming, and the easiest way to pay direct heed to that warning is to lighten up on the sector. And so that turned out to be crucial. So underweight equities in general, underweight financials, heavy cash, a little bit of exposure to the double short ETF, that led directly to the result. If I were to go over the specific smaller picture trades that I did. I don't even know if it's a push in terms of which ones that worked out and which ones didn't, because if you look at all the buys and sells I may have done, and there's not that many, but if you look at all the buys and sells that I did, obviously any sell skews toward being a good move because the market was down almost 40%. So the smaller picture things, I don't think I added a whole lot of value. Where it mattered was the plan, and this ties into something I talked about over and over. I made a simple plan long before there was any threat of emotion possibly being part of the equation, and then I stuck to it. And knock on wood, it worked. I'm convinced, and I just posted a comment that this worked pretty well in the last bear market. If you did it then, it worked pretty well in the bear market from the mid-70s. I think the 200-day moving average, a breach of that got you out in November, I think, of 1973. Take a look at your Trader's Almanac and see what happened after that. Never gets you out at the top. It spares you some pain. That's the goal. I said that over and over, and so it worked out pretty well. Someone felt the need to leave a comment, kind of defending me, saying I might be down 30%. Well, I don't think that person was really paying attention, or maybe was new to the blog. I'm going to repeat for emphasis. The market warned trouble was coming. The financial sector warned trouble was coming. I heeded those warnings, had a lot of cash, had a little double short, had very little financials relative to the market. Those are easily done by anybody. And so the next time something like this happens, hopefully you heed some of those warnings, and hopefully you miss some of the pain. I'm kind of on a bit of a hot streak with regard to client accounts. Last year, and I'll put a link to the video for the year-end 2007, the recap of the 2007 portfolio, lucked out with staying in emerging markets, energy, commodities, materials, all of those types of things that were agriculture, all of those things that worked, all through 2007. In 2007, the market was up about 5.5%, and if you look at the video, you'll see I was in the neighborhood of double that. So I'm on a hot streak. That's all the more reason now to chill out in terms of ego and emotion, and really just stick to your knitting. And sticking to my knitting, after a 40-50% drop, it makes sense to think, and I think this is consistent with my thinking all along, that we're due for some sort of bear market rally. Maybe the real thing, I don't think so. Real thing meaning a new bull market. I don't think so, but I think we're overdue for some sort of bear market rally. I'm going to add a few things, maybe 2 or 3 things, to capture more of it than I otherwise think I can capture right now. And, this also came up in the comments the other day. Any mediocre who's at least, or any manager who's at least mediocre is going to have hot streaks and cold streaks along the way. I've had a hot streak now for quite a few years, actually, if you go back and look. So maybe that means I'm due for a cold streak. Hopefully I can push it off as long as possible. But I'm going to stick to my knitting. Adding a little bit of exposure, that is a tweak. If I add 2 or 3 stocks, 6 to 9% of equity exposure, I participate in a bear market rally if it happens, but I think I'm still true to being defensive while we're below the 200-day moving average. If and when we go above it, whether it's this year or next year, I will then add more exposure more aggressively. If we are at a bottom now, and this is something else that I've said that I didn't come up with, but this is just how it works. If we're at a bottom now, very few people will realize it, very few people will act on it. I'm trying to act on it. I've done a couple of things so far. I'll do a couple of more things. I'm not buying them with both hands, but I am going to have a little more equity exposure. To me, that is sticking to my knitting, not letting the how I've done before get in the way with how I might do in the future. I've added some value, I believe, based on the last couple of years for clients toward the entire stock market cycle, but now I don't want to give it all back and completely miss a big rally. All right, that's it. Have a good weekend.